The desert wind sweeps across the ruins of Palmyra. Once, these stones echoed to the footsteps of merchants, soldiers, and rulers. And once, here in the 3rd century after Christ, a woman rose from the shifting sands of history to defy the most powerful empire the world had ever known. Her name was Zenobia, the queen who dared to challenge Rome. To understand her story, we must return to Palmyra itself. Nestled deep in the Syrian desert, Palmyra was more than a city. It was a crossroads of empires. Caravans laden with silk from China, spices from India, and glassware from Rome all passed through its gates. The city grew wealthy, cosmopolitan, and proud. Its temples were clad in marble, its streets lined with colonnades that dazzled travelers. Rome had long claimed the city as a client state, but Palmyra never fully surrendered its independence. It was too far, too rich, too shrewd. And when Rome grew weak during the 3rd century crisis, Palmyra saw an opening. At the center of this story was a woman unlike any other, Zenobia. Zenobia's origins remain shrouded in partial mystery. Some ancient sources claim she descended from Cleopatra herself, a deliberate echo of another queen who once defied Rome. Whether fact or propaganda, the association gave her an aura of legitimacy and danger. She married Odaenathus, Palmyra's ruler, who was a loyal ally of Rome. Together, they held the line against the Persians in the east. But when Odaenathus was assassinated under murky circumstances, Zenobia stepped forward. She took the throne as regent for her young son, Vabalafus, and almost immediately, she began to change the rules of the game. Zenobia was no mere caretaker. She spoke several languages, was trained in philosophy, and was said to ride with her troops for miles without tiring. Ancient chroniclers described her as intelligent, charismatic, and utterly determined. While Rome floundered, torn apart by civil wars, invasions, and economic collapse, Zenobia built her own empire. She seized control of neighboring territories, presenting herself as the protector of the East. In 269, she marched south into Egypt, one of Rome's richest provinces, and claimed it as her own. The Roman eagle still flew over the west, but in the east, the crescent of Palmyra was rising. For a moment, the impossible seemed within reach. Zenobia controlled vast lands, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, parts of Anatolia. She was not merely a client queen anymore. She was, in effect, empress of the East. But Rome was not yet finished. Aurelian, a soldier emperor forged in the chaos of the 3rd century, rose to power with one goal: restore the empire. When word reached him of Zenobia's defiance, he understood the danger. If Palmyra succeeded, the empire will be split forever. So in 272, he marched east with a seasoned army. The confrontation was inevitable. Zenobia rallied her forces, leading cavalry from the desert, archers who had mastered the bow on horseback, and the wealth of her empire behind her. She presented herself not just as a queen, but as a rival ruler, a sovereign equal to the emperor of Rome. Coins minted in Palmyra bore her son's face beside imperial titles, and behind him, always, stood the shadow of Zenobia. The armies clashed in Asia Minor and Syria. At first, Zenobia's cavalry held their ground, but Aurelian was relentless. Step by step, Rome advanced, pushing the Palmyrene army back toward their capital. At Emesa, modern Homs, Zenobia's forces suffered a crushing defeat. She retreated to Palmyra, the jewel of the desert, and prepared for a final stand. But even walls of stone cannot withstand hunger and thirst. As Aurelian's legions encircled the city, supplies dwindled. Then, in a dramatic attempt at escape, Zenobia fled on camelback, hoping to reach the Persians and rally support. But she was captured on the banks of the Euphrates. The Queen of Palmyra was now the prisoner of Rome. What happened next has been told in different ways. Roman sources claim Zenobia was paraded in Aurelian's triumph in Rome, chained with golden shackles so heavy she could barely walk. Yet others say she lived the rest of her life in comfort, granted an estate in Italy, where she became a Roman matron of high society. Which is true. Perhaps both contain fragments of reality. History records her defeat, but never quite extinguishes her spirit. Even in chains, Zenobia became immortal. So why does Zenobia's story endure? Partly because she was extraordinary. In a world ruled by men, she carved out an empire and nearly broke Rome itself. She was not merely a symbol. She was a strategist, a politician, a warrior queen. But also because her story echoes larger questions. Was she a rebel or a savior of the East? Was she a traitor to Rome, or a ruler simply seizing her moment in history's chaos? And what might have happened had she won? The ruins of Palmyra still stand today, battered by time and by modern wars, a haunting reminder of the empire that once challenged Rome. Walk among those fallen columns, and you can almost hear the echoes, the hoofbeats of Zenobia's cavalry, the voices of merchants in a dozen tongues. And above them all, the command of a queen who dared to dream of more. Zenobia's life is a paradox. She lost her empire, yet she triumphed in memory. She stood against the greatest power of her age, and though she fell, her defiance lingers. Perhaps that is why her legend survives, because she represents the eternal human refusal to bow completely to empire, to fate, to inevitability. The desert winds still sweep across Palmyra, and in their whisper, one can almost hear the question that history never answered. Was Zenobia a doomed rebel queen? Or the empress Rome never wanted to admit it almost had?